Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. I'm joined today by my newly formed friend from the Beach Nationals, the chairman of Associated Styles for USA Wrestling, multiple other hats, which we'll get into, Mr. Ed Duncan. Ed, good seeing you again, man.
David, great to see you again. Hadn't seen you in 2 weeks since the beat.
I know, we're jonesing, right? So let's talk about first, when I saw you in person, I think obviously I knew who you were. Hopefully, somewhere along the way of USA Wrestling, my name was familiar to you. It was great. We're both wearing the same hat. So thank you, Nike. Thank you, USA Wrestling, for us being able to make friends with each other. But we're talking a little bit then about your title. So tell me, you've got a lot of different waters you got your feet in. So to start with, why don't you explain to people what all you're doing to help our sport?
Well, I'm just fortunate to be able to do a lot of different things. I've spent a lot of time with North Carolina State Association. I spent several years as administrative director, and the last 6 years I've been able to be the state chairman for North Carolina USA Wrestling. And so that kind of the beach thing sort of led me to be asked to help with the Associated Styles Committee. That ended up getting me asked to help be part of the UWW Beach Committee. It's not a commission, it's a committee. So I serve on that for the U.S. And then this Tour of America, which I'm sure we'll talk about plenty. I guess I'm the tour organizer, you might say. We've talked about it several years, and I've eyeballed the Tour of America for folk style as sort of a model, and kind of just what if until this year I was talking like, well, you know what, it's time to do this thing. So we just went ahead and did it. So I'm kind of been running around all over the country, and that's how I saw you on a beach in Missouri a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was funny. So I work a lot with Austin Roper, who's one of the founders of that Beach Nationals.
Oh yeah.
His dad was the coach of Mizzou. For the people that don't know, Wes Roper, Austin's he's a young man, great young man. Works his fanny off on that, really smart on the social media side, a lot of the other stuff, and looks like he could still scrap. And we were just talking, and he had said to me like a couple months earlier, like, hey, do you think Ed Duncan would come out to our event? I'm like, I'll call. And I left you a voicemail and an email. And I think you were like, well, it depends. I'm going to try to make it. And then, so you came out, you drove 13 hours, only you snuck us, man. You didn't tell us. And so, me and Roper were talking a lot that week, and he goes, like, I had stopped by, made sure my hotel was ready, go to the room. He's like, Ed Duncan's here. I'm like, let's go. So let's start with the rules of beach wrestling, because I think there's some people that haven't seen it.
What?
Let's be like, the people that watch us are a lot of coaches.
We got to help these people, man.
We got to help them. So I will tell you this, I'll work backwards. If you're going to spend 6 hours at a tournament, it's a lot more fun to spend it at a Beach Nationals event than in the bleachers. I will say that. We will probably get into some of the moms that wrestled last Sunday. There's some pretty great storylines. So I'll tell you what I know, and you fill in the blank for people. It's first wrestler to get to 3 points. It's 3 minutes. It's a continuous running clock. A takedown is worth 1. A push out / step out is worth 1. You can push out. There's no, if your arms were extended, like the person goes out, the person that didn't go out gets 1. Feet to back is 3, which ends the match. And if there's a tie, the last person that scored wins. What did I get right and wrong?
I think you got about everything right. I'm not sure about the running clock, but it depends. I forget to keep time most of the time because whoever gets the 3 minutes in a beach match, right? But occasionally they do. So the only other thing is if it's a 0-0 tie right now, currently the tiebreaker in 0-0 is the lighter wrestler wins, which is really interesting and makes for some really interesting matches at the senior level on the world stage. So, but it's good. It's simple. Like you said, takedowns 1, push-outs 1, feet to backs 3. We're done with the rules. Can we go after watching wrestling now? So
the lighter wrestling is very interesting because, like, if you are a pound lighter than the other person.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of people, like, one of the things I really love about beach is forget weight classes, right? Forget making weight. Like that's so painful to make weight, right? So the senior men and women's only have 4 categories. There's like 50, 60, 70, 80 kilograms. 10 kilograms is probably 22 pounds difference, right? So you've got a guy at the bottom of a 70 kilogram weight class and a guy who's 79 kilograms. They're 20 pounds apart. And at the senior level, that's a lot of weight to give up. So you have to employ some strategy in those situations. And honestly, the sand makes those kind of matches still interesting, right? I mean, it's not like the bigger guy's always going to just smash the smaller guy. So it's really fun to watch, interesting. And same thing applies to the age groups. The old school rules of beach wrestling for the age groups, they literally used to divide them in how you could take your group. If there's 25 kids, you divide them in half. This half's the lightweights and that half's the heavyweights, and you bracket them up from there and go. And it's really, so you're going to end up with some, 10, 15 pound differentials. But again, the sand is sort of like the great equalizer, right? It's not like on the mat where brute strength is always going to win the day. So,
yeah. My dad, did a ton of those, freestyle tournaments in the summertime. And I remember like once the people would weigh in, it was grouping them, and we didn't have track wrestling back then or Flow to help us with, all the software. It was all on paper and stuff. One question that I don't know if I got answered, I haven't thought of it because it didn't happen. But when you mentioned this weight class thing, what happens if somebody's stalling? Are there any stalling calls?
They should be fired from beach wrestling. There shouldn't be stalling, right?
I know, but if I'm lighter than you and I try to run for 3 minutes,
there's no passivity. There's no stalling. There's no pass. I mean, let's be honest. It's only 3 minutes.
Okay.
Right? If somebody's running for 3 minutes, we can endure that, and we'll get on to the next match pretty quick.
Gotcha.
So I don't see that much. It's more, I mean, obviously the rules award the attacking wrestler more. So, it pays to be on the attack if you can.
And there's a lot of stalemates too, like where if like you get underneath somebody and they stop, if the referees tend to blow the action up quickly. So I'll tell you this, you used a word that I liked. You called it passes the passerby test.
Yep.
And I also think that it's very good if you're like a lot of us and have some form of ADD, where it's like, like squirrel, you're looking at the next thing, the matches are really fast. Obviously I was doing some play-by-play there, but mostly it was talking to the folks like you while the wrestling is going on in the background. Cause the matches are quick, and especially if people are outmatched. There was one guy there who was mean mugging everybody, and he got dropped on his head quick, which didn't break my heart. And he's like, I didn't want to win the first one. Then he lost all 3. And it's like, I wanted to hear the explanation after the third one. So let's talk about the one that was in Lake of the Ozarks. Okay. Just as an example, sort of a microcosm, and then we'll build out. So those guys put that event on. They had about 200 people, multiple weight classes. The U.S. Marine Corps was there. They use it as, they're obviously raising a few dollars kind of thing, but these are also, let's talk about the event and what it qualifies you for. So like if somebody says, I'm going to go watch or compete in beach wrestling, I kind of know now after having been a part of this event for a couple of years, what to expect. What is sort of the reasonable expectation for somebody?
First expectation is fun. You're going to the beach, right? I mean, can we be real? It's the beach, and we love wrestling already, and so we love the beach. It wasn't a hard sell for me, David. Somebody said, "You want to go to the beach and do some wrestling on the beach?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." First of all, it's going to be a good time, right? And it's going to be relaxed, but there's also a very competitive element to it. The guys there at Lake of the Ozarks. Those guys do such a fantastic job with that tournament. And that tournament's not new. That tournament's been around probably 5 years.
Yeah.
They had an off year in the COVID situation.
I'm well aware. Yeah.
Strong this year. It came back strong this year.
Yes.
And, the one thing I actually reached out to those guys. So fun story about Austin. They came out to Beach Nationals several years ago as competitor. And he competed, and they did a promo. You can still find it on YouTube. There's this video about trying to make the beach world team. And it's about an 8 or 9 minute promo. And of course they had their drone, and they were doing some marketing for some other companies while they were there, but they had a great time. And they kind of like, hey, this is fun. We're going to go back and do this in Missouri. I'm like, let's do it. So they started doing their own thing there. I had nothing to do with the starting of that event. And of course, they have really good marketing backgrounds and promotional side of that stuff, and have done a great job. And I'll tell you, I was really impressed. One of the things I've really loved this summer about this tour of America, I've got to go to Iowa, I've got to go to Missouri, and these are, I'm a North Carolina boy, so that's like wrestling meccas out there,
Yeah.
and just to see the volunteers that they have at the
Yes.
tournament. I mean, like, everybody's a volunteer, everybody's helping out, everybody's making the event better, and those guys had a tremendous volunteer. Obviously, you mentioned Wes and Becky were there. That's Austin's parents. I think they outworked all the young guys that were there.
So Wes Roper's a multiple-time All-American, was raking the mat, for lack of a better phrase.
Yep.
And Becky works harder than all of us.
Oh, yeah.
So, she outworked him and everybody else.
She did admissions and awards, and that was just for warm-ups.
And painted the podium.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, she's a savage, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible.
Everybody needs a Becky, right? Everybody, all the wrestling guys need a Becky. So
respect, yeah.
They did a great, but again, they had such a great team there, and so this year, I reached out to them as we were putting the tour together, because that was one of my bucket lists. Like, we need a Missouri event. The Midwest Beach Nationals is already well established, and they were they were excited about coming on board with the tour. Gave them a promotion, and I think it turned out fantastic. I was thrilled to get to go out there, and they hooked me up with a place right there beside the venue. Didn't have to drive anywhere, and that's my first time at the Lake of the Ozarks, so I was impressed with the power boats, and I'm ready to go back to the shootout now.
Did you watch you've been watching the Netflix show? Is that your only knowledge of Ozarks?
I haven't made it that far, man. I haven't. This was my first time there. So
yeah, it's those people go hard in the paint out there.
Yeah.
Like, they're not playing between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That is experience. That is an absolute experience. So anyway, by the way, I'm looking over your shoulder. You have some picture in front of the arch, so you obviously have some love for Missouri there.
Oh yeah, baby, that's my St. Louis trip. Listen, if I wasn't a Braves fan, I'd probably be a Cardinals fan. I'm still a mad respect for the Cardinals, though, because
come over to the dark side. We'll take you.
No, they know how to. They know how to be baseball fans in St. Louis, man.
Yeah, we're a baseball town for sure.
Chili Max, you've been to Chili Max downtown?
Oh, boss, I've been everywhere downtown.
I love it. Chili Max now. When I get out to St. Louis,
I could take you around to St. Louis and take you to the cool spot you don't know about. I got you the next time you come through.
Down for that, 100%.
I got you the next time. So my guy runs Ballpark Village over there. Like they're actually helping us sponsor the event. So yeah, we could take care of you, boss.
David, I feel my arm twisting. I feel it.
Exactly. So, all right, let's explain the Tour of America. What is that exactly? How do people either see that next year, like if they want to participate, all that kind of stuff?
Well, this is our first rodeo this year, our first go around with it. And I talked to the guys at USA Wrestling and said, hey, let's do a Tour of America for beach wrestling. Let me find some events across the country. Let's get them sanctioned as USA events. And let's put some points to the winners, and ultimately we're tabulating the points, working on that as we speak. Really, I've been trying to keep up with this. I had so many events the last 6 weeks, I got a little behind, but we're trying to get caught up on that. And obviously at the end of the series, somebody's going to be ultimately the tour winner. We had 11 events on the tour schedule this year.
Okay.
And we started with Beach Nationals in Carolina Beach. And then, of course, we went to Nashville, great place to beach wrestle with Mike Hatcher and his boys over in Tennessee. We went down to Huntsville, Alabama, and worked with the Spartan guys down there for an event, the Rocket City Rumble. That was pretty cool. We went up to Fargo, of course, which that was an experience in of itself, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that. Keep going.
We went down to Iowa. You got to go to Iowa if you're going to have a wrestling event, right? There's got to be some Iowa I said we got to have an event in Iowa, so boom, here we are. We went down there to the Rathburn Lake, and those guys did a great job down there. Jamie Cochran, actually, Jamie's helped me a lot with the website. Those guys down there have been great, and let's see, we went from Iowa, then we went out to Missouri. I'm leaving somebody else. Oh, we had the Buckeye Beach Bash last week in Ohio up near Cincinnati, and the Kentucky Beach Open. We did the Kentucky event up in Louisville the week, a couple of weeks, July 30th, whatever weekend that was. And I think that's all of them so far. And we still got Biloxi Beach coming up in September, and we got 2 in California to wrap it up, which I'm super. We can talk about California. That's another separate topic, but those guys out there, Todd Blank and Tim Condit and the whole crew in California USA Wrestling have honestly, can I just be honest? They've taken the lead on beach wrestling like they have in a lot of other things, like women's wrestling before.
Yeah.
I think they're going to end up with about 8 events this summer.
That's awesome.
It's exciting. And so the last 2, though, we're going to do the Southern California Championships in Huntington Beach on October 8th and the Northern California Championships on October the 15th at Pacifica, which is
okay. So let's say I'm wrestling in these and I can get to a couple of them. Like I don't live that far from Nashville. I don't live that far from Iowa. Obviously, I don't live that far from the Ozarks. I can probably make it to Kentucky. But there's these other events. And so like, there's 11 events and, I'm getting zeros and say 5, 6, 7 of them. Okay. And let's say I'm pretty good and I'm getting first or second place points at the other 4. At the end of this, is somebody get like a belt for being a champion? Does that qualify you for the world team? What does that actually do?
We're going to talk to Matt Chat and Nike about sponsoring those awards, and I'll let you know what it's going to be when we get there. So
I feel like if that happens, I'd know before you, but okay.
That part's a work in progress. Honestly, we knew we wanted to put it together, and we're still kind of coming up with what the awards are going to be at the end, and it's definitely going to change, right? Our whole point was to get this thing launched this year, and then we're going to build it out from here. And I will say, besides the 11 events that are on the schedule, there's a record number of beach events this summer. Washington State has had at least 2, if not more. Minnesota, I could go down the list. I mean, just state after state after state. Every time I turn around, I keep hearing about a new beach event. I just actually had a phone call right before we got on the phone with Hawaii. I guess I'll have to go to Hawaii, right?
If you need an announcer, let your boy know.
Right.
Like Mirikitani is part Hawaiian name.
There you go.
Florida
just reached. Of course, we've already done beach nationals in Florida once.
Yeah.
So our concept with the tour was a little bit of NASCAR. Like they have the Daytona 500, which is the first race of the year. That's the biggest race of the year, and then it goes from there with the points chase, right? So beach nationals kicks off the tour. And then we just kind of worked East Coast to West Coast as we go along in the summer, pulling in the Gulf Coast here in September. And that's another exciting event that I got to tell you a little about. Biloxi Sand Jam. So Mississippi is one of the last states to not have a USA chapter, right?
Yeah.
They're getting a USA chapter, though. And this event's going to be the kickoff for the Mississippi USA organization.
Let's go, Mississippi. Let's go.
David Sutherland's going to be their state chairman down there. The Mississippi Wrestling Foundation, those guys have already been doing a lot of work. They're the ones that have gotten wrestling going in Mississippi already. And so turns out the mayor of Biloxi is a great event organizer and wants to bring more events to town. He's excited about beach wrestling. So they've hooked up, and it's like the mayor said, please bring it to Biloxi. And we're like, okay, we will. And so here we go, man. And I'm pumped about it because, listen, Mississippi's Southeast Regional. And that's going to, if we can get the state of Mississippi rolling with some wrestling, that's going to help us out in the Southeast. It's going to make competition in places like Alabama and Louisiana better as well. And I'm all about that. So
awesome. So a couple things pop into mind, but I'm going to kind of work. Well, this is how my brain works. Let's talk about Fargo. It was, Fargo, the United States Marine Corps, U16 and junior nationals, which used to be cadets and juniors, had just become Fargo. It's like facial tissue is Kleenex kind of thing.
Exactly.
So it made a lot of sense to me. Let me start by saying I'm truly blessed to be on USA Wrestling's airwaves twice a week.
Right.
I don't get consulted on a lot of decisions. So, I'm sort of observing on a lot of these things like everybody else, but I'm like, oh, they're going to do beach nationals or beach wrestling up there. That makes complete sense. There's a ton of kids up there already going. It's fun. If you lost in this other thing, maybe you can do this. You're already there. You know, probably hotels are super cheap right after Fargo because nobody's there. I mean, I'm calling it Fargo. So how did it go?
Well, I got to start. You got to give Pete Isaiah in the events department credit for giving in, basically, right?
Pete is the man. Pete is the freaking man.
I've been pestering Pete. I'm like, Pete, we need to beach. So this was my logic. Last year, if you were in Fargo, you remember it was the 50th anniversary, right? And we had this huge celebration, 50th year. Everything was looking back at the history of the tournament, and it was great. I loved it. We had dignitaries everywhere, special events over at the Air Center there, and it was great. And this year was the 20th anniversary for the women. But I was telling Gary and I was telling those guys, I said, look, we looked back last year. Now this is year 51. What are we doing to look forward? What is USA Wrestling doing to push towards the future? Beach wrestling's the future, man. And I said, so we need beach wrestling in Fargo. Not to mention the fact, if you're going to have a tour of America and you're going to bucket list and say we need, like, you know, just dream it. What's the dream, right? Well, Fargo's got to be on the list. And the most important thing for beach wrestling, in my opinion, right now is exposure and getting more wrestling people to see it and to experience it. And there's no better place to do that with 16Us and juniors than Fargo, right? And be honest, can I be honest with you? Like, we've got some studs that are now Fargo champs, Fargo All-Americans that had been in beach nationals before. And last year I heard a couple of people as they were getting announced on the stage, you know, reading off the bios, and people were reading off beach national champion. And I'm like, how cool is that?
Gives it credibility for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Mia Macaluso is going to be one of our girls on the world team over in Romania in a couple of months. And so there's a whole bunch of others on the girls' side, especially that have placed in Fargo or won Fargo. And so anyway, Fargo was just a natural. But now, again, Pete kind of gave me permission, albeit reluctantly, to bring it aboard. And I kind of tried to keep it, you know, not in his hair as much as possible, although he would tell you I ended up in his hair some. But we worked through all the.
He's got some great hair too.
Oh, really? Yeah, right. Professionally done. Definitely professionally done. But we ended up at a place, Fargo Gastropub, volleyball and billiards. Turns out it's like the biggest billiards hall in North America. And they've added volleyball to the back side of it there. And the owners there, they had brand new owners, and they were very reluctant. Obviously, they're like, we've never heard of beach wrestling. And they were kind of trepidatious about getting involved, but they agreed to do it. And then after we did it, they're like huge fans.
Yeah.
We took pictures. We exchanged shirts. They got medals to hang up in the bar area back there in the back.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a fantastic place. And it's really only about 15 minutes from the Fargo Dome. And so best thing for us is they had all the amenities there. We didn't have to build a beach over on campus or anything like that. That was going to be a big headache.
No, to circle back to the one in the Ozarks, like they did it at Captain Ron's, which is this bar that has sand pits out in the back. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is I've talked to a couple colleges about helping them fundraise because it's something I'm fairly good at. And I think that a beach nationals tournament or a beach event in a lot of ways could be more profitable than a golf tournament. Okay. Because, you know, like if you play golf, if you, me, Pete, and Gary are in a foursome, we're not seeing anybody else for 5 hours anyway. It's just us and whoever's driving the beer cart.
Right.
And so it's not like if 120 people are there, you're seeing 116 of them. You're seeing 3 other people. Where at the beach nationals, you know, if people, instead of paying to play golf, they pay to rent cabanas. Okay.
Yep.
And they get to hang out. And I'm like, oh, there's Ed in the cabana next to me. I can go walk over. It's actually more social. Also, a lot of people that wrestle aren't that good at golf, and we're all good at sitting around and watching things.
Exactly.
So, like, you don't have to be made to feel stupid.
And
It's also
a lot of us think we're good at beach wrestling.
Well, that might happen too. Yeah, you'd have some challenge matches coming out of nowhere, but honestly, it just feels like a more social thing. Also, like if you're the coaches, like if you're a school at, let's just say we did it at Merrimack where I used to coach, and we do it in St. Louis. Now my dad and myself can walk around to all 20 cabanas in the course of
Yep.
4 hours and spend, time with each of them, 10 to 15 minutes with each of them. And then if you have an after party, usually can be right there. You can have a silent auction.
Yep.
It feels like that might not be the way you want to grow it, but to get more people to do it, honestly, I feel like, maybe these golf tournaments for people are spending all kinds of money, but they're going to do that at the silent auction anyway. And probably they're probably going to drink more at a beach nationals than they are in a golf cart, because you don't want them driving those golf carts anyway at a certain point.
That's right. So I learned a little something, and you're talking about doing these things. Obviously, places like the people are like, where's there a beach in Iowa? Well, there's a beach at Rathburn Lake. Where's there a beach in Kentucky? We were at a volleyball place in Kentucky that was literally a mile from Churchill Downs. And so one of the big things that I love about the beach wrestling is we're getting to go to destinations. We're getting to go to these super cool venues. I will say this, and this is, take it for what it's worth, one of, if not the fastest growing sport in America is beach volleyball, men's and women's. The place we were at in Kentucky, no, take that back. The place we were at in Loveland in Ohio last weekend was a huge place, Grand Sands Volleyball. Give a big shout out to Grand Sands. Shout out to Hyden Beach down in Nashville. Shout out to the city Parks and Rec in Huntsville. These are all the six-pack volleyball in Kentucky. These are all volleyball facilities, right? The ones, Grand Sands in Cincinnati was the 5th one to ever open in the country. They've been in business like 13 years, and they started with 5 indoor courts. They added 5 outdoor courts, and then they added another 10 courts. So they've got 20 courts of sand volleyball, which the way I translate that's 40 rings potentially of beach wrestling. That's a lot of mats. You know what I mean? That's like 40 mats at 25 matches an hour. You can do a lot of wrestling. So, but these facilities are, and I was talking to the owner there at Grand Sands, and she said, yeah, we used to be one of the few, but she said, these are popping up everywhere. And if you look around at all the different places that sports places are adding outdoor beach volleyball courts to their offerings. And also it's starting to get added to some high school programming. And you're starting to see high schools put in sand volleyball on their campuses. So I am a big beach volleyball fan because I'm a beach wrestling guy, and I need to
piggyback. Yeah.
I'm bingo coattails, right? If you're going to ride coattails, why not ride the best coattails in town? And for those guys, like the owner of Grand Sands Volleyball, the owner of Hyden Beach down in Nashville, beach wrestling represents another stream of revenue for those folks. I doubt if we got a lot of volleyball people watching the Mat Chat, but if you've got a volleyball facility in your town or a sports bar or pub that's got volleyball, for them, the beach wrestling is another revenue stream, right? It's another group that can come in and utilize that facility when it's not being used for volleyball, and it makes more money for them, and it's good for us.
I'm the club/RTC coach here at Lindenwood University in St. Charles, and they're a school that's transitioning from D2 to D1. So, you know how that is, where like they go on the blackout stage and it's difficult to recruit. And, I love those coaches there. They're shout out to Dallas and Mena and Frank and Chach and those guys. They've accepted me with open arms. So, but when you come out of the PE facility, probably 50 to 100 yards away is this little lake. And it's got sand there. And I'm like, you could just run a beach event right here.
Yep.
I think a lot of us correlate beach with ocean, right? I mean, I think that's a natural correlation. Like if you're playing password, that might literally be the correlation, but it doesn't have to be. And like at Lake of the Ozarks, it's literally a gigantic body of water, but it doesn't have to be next to the Pacific Ocean or Lake Superior or something like that. It's just where you can throw something down. And when you're talking about how many rings, one of the things, I don't know if people haven't seen it, is the circles, and you would know the diameter. I'm guessing it's about 20 feet, give or take.
7 meters, which is 23 feet.
All right, that's pretty close, plus or minus a meter. I'll take it. But they're basically like gigantic hula hoops with a string inside of them, and the pieces are sort of broken, like they're a bunch of little, like almost running batons. So like sometimes the circle won't be perfectly circular, or somebody steps on it. At one point they watered the sand down.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I'm gonna to finish with kind of the UWW thing, but I want to go to a specific thing where I think Beach Nationals did something that a regular wrestling tournament wouldn't do. So Jason Keck is a good friend of mine. He brought, I think, 25 kids from Greater Heights to wrestle in this event. And
2 cabanas.
yeah, Jason's the man. He's helped those guys with their legal setup, like getting their LLC and everything else in place. So big promoter of wrestling, besides being a great coach and a great lawyer. So apparently the night before or the morning of, 4 of these moms just decided to enter the tournament.
Yep.
I'm sure that decision was made completely without any influence of alcohol at all. So I'm sure that's what happened. So yeah, we'll go with that story, right? So the funny thing is this, like, they wrestle and, they don't know what the hell they're doing, but they're trying really hard. You can also see how tired they're getting right away. At one point, one woman went out there with her hat and glasses on and we're like, you have to take those off. And I think you were actually on the mic with me when one of those things happened. But what's really interesting was I talked to one of the moms afterwards, and she said, I think I'll be a better wrestling mom.
Yep.
I said, why do you say that? Because, like, to me, the why is almost more interesting than the what a lot of the times, right? Because you and I could think the same things for entirely different reasons because we have entirely different backgrounds and life experiences. And she said, there's a lot of times where I'd be yelling at my son, go, go, and it doesn't look like he's doing anything. Yep. And she says, now I realize that and I said, the other person is pretty good too. She goes, well, yeah, or at least in our case, the other person was trying. She goes, so I think I'm going to look more at effort. And she goes, I think that'll probably make me a more supportive mom. And I'm like, that's amazing. And then, like, this lady's a savage. She goes, next year we're doing a training camp for her.
There you go. Love it. I love it.
But I do, we all love wrestling for what it does in our life besides the wrestling part, right? Like the relationships we have. Like, I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for wrestling.
Right.
That's just a reality. It's but it's a blessing to have literally hundreds of people in my life because of wrestling.
Right.
And for a mom, because most people associate wrestlers with fathers, but for a mom to say, I'll be a better wrestling parent because I did this experience. And the only place in the world they were going to get to do that is at a beach wrestling event. That's never going to happen like an open freestyle tournament on a Saturday.
Right.
So, you have a smile on your face. How does that make you feel that you're sort of spearheading something that's literally helping parent-child relationships?
Well, I know we only have 45 minutes here, but I could go on and on about why I think beach wrestling is actually an important style and a good style. One of the things about it is the point of entry, the barriers to entry in beach wrestling, I believe, are lower. So you're going to have an opportunity for moms to come out and try it. Dads can still, we have a lot of coaches that bring their kid. I had one coach there from Kansas that he told his club, if you get 10 guys to go, I'll go wrestle. And sure enough, they had 10 guys that signed up, and he was there and he competed alongside of them. Now he wouldn't want to go to a freestyle Greco tournament and compete because he's going to get dropped on his head and try to battle through a 6-minute match or two and end up injured. And if he could come to the beach tournament, have a good time with his kids and compete and have a good time. And it's still, listen, beach wrestling is not a joke as far as a competition style. It is work to get out in that sand and try maneuver in it. And it changes so many ways you think about things. I love anything that gets my kids to expand their thinking when they're on the wrestling mat, right? So beach wrestling expands their thinking. And, but like you said, this mom, because she's able to get out there and try it, right? She's now got a better perspective than what her kid's going through when he's out there in the ring. And whether it's a beach ring or whether it's a regular match, she's going to have a better understanding because she had that experience. So I'm totally happy about that, right? That's exciting to know that they're getting to kind of experience each other's world a little bit there. I love that he was over there coaching her too, right? I said, don't be too hard on your athlete there.
Remember, she still controls your allowance when this is over.
Still got the allowance money, exactly. So, but it was great to see the kids coaching the parents. And that's the thing. I started, you said, what do you expect at the beach tournament? I expect fun. That was fun, man. Seeing those ladies out there scrapping was fun. Seeing those big crowds from Greater Heights and the other clubs that were there, that was fun. And like, I love wrestling. I have fun. Listen, I coach high school wrestling, youth wrestling. I've coached world team guys here for beach wrestling. I have fun. I've always enjoyed, like, I had fun when I watched Ric Flair and Wahoo McDaniels on television as a kid, right? My brother and I used to play King of the Mountain in the backyard. That was our wrestling mat growing up. We didn't have wrestling mats in our community. Everybody had a basketball until you were in the at least high school, and but we wrestled in the backyard all the time. So to me, anything like bringing the fun back to it, I've never not had fun with wrestling, as far as even folk style and freestyle and Greco. I love them all, but beach brings an extra element of, look, it's beach wrestling. There's a reason I capitalize the word beach in our hashtags and on our social media, because there's an attitude that goes with going to the beach, right? It's when I take my family to the beach, I don't get stressed out. I can relax. I can have fun. I can enjoy being with my family. And
it's a really good point, because like when kids would lose, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to say this. Like when kids lose at a gym, you know, like you see kids crying in the corners and stuff like that. And kids here, like I'm sure they were upset, but like, you know, they go get a soda, they get a slice of pizza, and they're back to it. And not everything has to be so serious every minute of our lives, right?
Yeah, now that's what I don't like. I don't like seeing kids crying after they lost at a beach wrestling tournament. That makes me sad.
I didn't see a lot of that, I'm saying.
No, that's the wrong mentality though, right? So don't bring that mentality to the beach wrestling. Leave that in the gym, please, and come with a little bit happier smile on your face. Have a good time. I will say beach wrestling is not always going to be won by the better wrestler. There is an opportunity with the way the rules are for the occasionally somebody can, you know, you can get headlocked real easy. Slip up, you push the wrong way, and next thing you know, you're getting threed and match is over. So you kind of got to take that with a grain of salt. It's kind of like you don't go to a NASCAR race expecting to win every race if you're a race car driver. You'd like to win them all, but you'll be happy with a place, you know.
Well, Keck told me that they had given the Greater Heights kids, like there was like this, I think it was a 3-week window, and he'll watch this and he'll text me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a 3-week window after Fargo that off the mats, right? Like just off the mats, go be a kid, go do those things. And then this was coming up, and he said some of the kids were like, is it okay if we go to this? And it's like, yeah, go. And he's like, well, do we need to train? Like, no, like we're just having fun, you know, and like, and even the tone of how the coaches were yelling, it felt like they were yelling to the kids and not at the kids, you know, something like this. So I want to hit on one last thing that's important. Okay.
Yep.
So you and me talked about this, and we could talk for hours, but UWW. Okay. So we all want, you know, like everybody wants 10 weight classes, you know, freestyle, 10 weight classes, women's freestyle, 10 weight classes, men's Greco. Let's add women's Greco and 10 weight. But obviously there's 16 days, you know, we want full backside wrestle backs, you know, not the repechage. But you've been involved with this at a high level. What we want versus what's realistic are two entirely different things. I mean, right? So for those of us that have a wish list to just love wrestling, right? We love wrestling for whatever it did for us in our lives, whatever we won and lost. What is UWW's position on beach wrestling, and what are the prospects that beach wrestling could eventually get added at the Olympic or like at the Olympic level?
Well, I think first of all, I got to say I love all the styles. I love freestyle. I'm a huge Greco fan. I love Greco. I love wrestling. That's one of my favorites to compete in and to get my athletes to compete in. Freestyle, folk style, all of them. Love them all. Coach them all. From a UWW point of view, though, the Olympics are not about wrestling. The Olympics are about eyeballs on televisions. They're about ad revenue. They're about viewership. And so there has to be a level of interest. And so if you look at the sports that have been added to the Olympic program in the last few years, skateboarding got added. I had an opportunity to room with Mark Waters, who was the one of the main guys in USA skateboarding in the 2019 World Beach Games. And we talked for hours about how skateboarding got to be in the Olympics, basically. And you look at the other sports, 3-on-3 basketball, so many of the X game type sports that have been added to the Olympic program. That's not an accident. The Olympic Committee knows that the viewership for sports entertainment is a younger demographic, and they've got to put a product out there that suits that younger demographic. You were talking about how fast beach wrestling goes. it goes about the same speed kids scroll on their phone, right? They're going through that Instagram just like this, right?
Yeah.
They've got an attention span about 3 minutes, maybe, right? So it's beach wrestling in a lot of ways fits that mold of an X game type sport. When we were at the World Beach Games, we saw that on full display over in Qatar in 2019. And of course, we're going back to Bali in 2023, which I'm super excited about that. Beach wrestling is a core sport for the World Beach Games for 23 and 25. And that's all your national organizing committees that do the Olympics that are part of that deal. So it tells you that their eyes are on wrestling. And then you've got the whole issue of gender equity in the Olympics. That's not a take your feelings out of it. Mathematically, right now, there's 12 men's weights and 6 women's weights. That's not equality. So now slice that however you want to slice it to make it gender equality, right? All I can tell you is beach wrestling has 4 men's weights and 4 women's weights. And I didn't get super far in math, but I'm pretty sure if you take 6 plus 4 and 6 plus 4, you end up with 10. If you take 6 freestyle men's and women's and 4 beach men's and women's, you end up with 10 and 10. That actually gets 2 additional slots in the Olympics for both the men and the women's. Numerically, you go from 18 slots to 20, and you've achieved gender equity, and you've added a style of wrestling that is universally appreciated around the world in places where mat wrestling is not always available, like Africa, for example, the Caribbean, Latin America. Mats are expensive, buildings are expensive. Beach wrestling can be done outdoors. The rings you don't even have to have a ring. You just draw a circle in the sand, right? And so
that's a good point. Yeah.
There's a lot of appeal to it from a global perspective. And
you don't need knee pads. You don't need shoes. You don't need headgear. You don't need socks.
So
you need a pair of shorts. If you're a guy.
More diversity on the program. You got to have athletes from all these different countries able to compete in the style, and all that is appealing to the Olympic Committee, right? Because you're talking about more viewership, more eyeballs. The length of time it takes for a match is shorter, so you've got more commercial opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of, it's not it's not just a wrestling argument. There's a lot of other things that are going to go into that decision. I do know, I heard Rich Bender say it this past weekend at the State Leader Summit. They're talking about UWW especially pushing if they want to keep men's Greco, they can bring beach in possibly for the women on their side. And
that's what I was going to ask you is it likely that if they added this, they would add women first because of the Greco component?
I don't know about that. That could be true. I get a little concerned about that because I fear the perception that it's sexualizing the women. Because, you know what I'm saying? The whole notion of, you're going to make the women wrestling in a bikini in the sand, but you let the guys have men's Greco. I mean, we already have that argument in America about women's Greco. And
you could change the uniforms though, right? I mean,
the uniforms are fine. It's not an issue, but it's just, I personally think you bring them, but you've already got 4 men's and 4 women's weights, so it's balanced.
I think if you put them in like what women fight MMA in, like fight shorts and a compression top, I think you could avoid that other part.
You're not going to get me to say it out loud that somebody's thinking about taking Greco out of the Olympics, because I probably would get thrown for 5 by a lot of big European guys, right? Because Greco is the style in Europe. It's the style in Russia. It's like that's the number one style, not freestyle. No,
I know. I had an argument with somebody from a different network, and they were like, "That's not true," and I'm like, "It's absolutely true."
So I respect that, and I think that we have to respect that. That's probably the perspective they're bringing to the conversation with UWW. Right. Now, that said, I will say beach wrestling, a Greco wrestler should excel in beach wrestling. And I can 100% see where the Greco guys very easily could transition to the beach style. You know what I mean? And be very, very, very successful at it. So not saying the freestyle guys can't, they certainly can, but the Greco guys are already used to staying on their feet, and, not that you can attack the legs in beach, but there is a lot of upper body stuff that goes on in the beach.
Yeah, I think pummeling underhooks are more important. It's more prevalent. It's a little bit like sumo, a little bit like Greco, like holding your ground. And And also I think an obvious statement is it's a lot more difficult to complete a penetration step on Sam than on a mat.
Oh yeah.
So, all right.
I feel like we're out of time. We got to do this again, man, because we're not anywhere close to done with this conversation.
No, but I think it was a very good overview, right? Like I think somebody asked me one time, and I'll give the very abbreviated version of this. They said, what's your shtick? Like, if you're doing this, what is your shtick? And I'm like, after a bunch of arguments, I didn't have a shtick, and then realized I needed one is, well, I was insulted. And then I realized, like, okay. And I go, it's me and whoever I'm with, who's my friend. We're sitting around watching a wrestling match or UFC, and we're just hanging out and talking.
Yep.
And I get to ask cool people, cool questions that other people don't get to ask.
Right.
And I'm friendly enough with them that they give me more, and with what's going on in ESPN with the captain, more than the Derek Jeter answer. So which, if you know that, like, that's like, yeah. I'm just here to help the old Bull Durham speech. So I appreciate what you did to help my guys down in like the Ozarks. I think the credibility of having the UWW and the USA Wrestling signage was very significant to those young guys. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine being at their age and like, man, like this is super cool. And appreciate your friendship and support of the pod and the stuff you've done to help me. And I'm glad we were able to get you on and just talk about this, because I think people, the thing I took away from the Beach Nationals this year more than anything was that one conversation with that mom. I was like, man, that's cool. Like, somebody's going to literally, a big credit to her for having the wherewithal to realize like this is a pivot point. There's a tipping point where I can be better. I love my kid to death, and I've actually now found a tangible way to be even better. So that was awesome.
Yep, exactly. That's the thing. Beach wrestling brings the fun back to wrestling, which is what most people, when they first start, it's fun, right? As we go on, sometimes it becomes the grind, right? And it becomes the grind for the kid and the parents. And to be able to get back to the first love, to get back to the original thing that you were drawn to it for at first, the fun part of it. So I think that's great. I do hope folks will follow our world team. September 3rd and 4th will be the senior athletes. September 1st and 2nd will be the U17s and the U20s in Romania. UWW Beach Wrestling World Series. They're all over social media. Find them. I'm sure there'll be some videos on it. And then we've got, like I said, be sure to get signed up for Biloxi Beach Sand Jam, the Huntington Beach event, and the event out in Pacifica in October. Be sure to jump on those last two tour events and get those last little points scored for the Tour of America. And by the way, that's really close to Los Angeles. 2028.
Yeah.
Hey,
I will say this.
We hear like this.
Roper and I were talking, and you're on the microphone, and you're literally, I will say, persuading people that if they don't buy event T-shirts, they're not doing their kid a favor for going back to school. I'm like, that dude is a hustler and a salesman. And I feel like I'm the same way, so I love it.
Hey, listen, this is the greatest product ever. It's beach wrestling. If you're not buying this, I don't know. Like, you can be you. Like, that's the world we live. You can be you, but like, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to do beach wrestling or at least come out and see it, right?
Well, USA Wrestling's blessed that you're their spokesperson, because you're going to make some things happen that a lot of other people that are more passive wouldn't. So
we're just getting started, baby. We are just getting started. And listen, Pete and Gary, huge shout out to Gary Abbott. Gary Abbott started Beach Nationals in Rochester, New York, 100 years ago, not 100 years ago, but like a lot of years ago before I came along. And Rusty Davidson from New Mexico, he's been to all the beach world events. Those guys, fantastic. The USWA guys, I got to give a huge shout out to Todd Blank and Tim Condit and all the USWA board members who have embraced beach wrestling as a style. They were very gracious with their time in Fargo, even though they were already a little short-staffed, and COVID made them even more short-staffed the last couple of days. They came out and supported it, and that was awesome. So, just blessed, man. It's a blessing, and it's a super great opportunity to grow the sport of wrestling. And that's what I think all of us would love to see wrestling grow. And this is just another vehicle to do it with. Well,
Gary Abbott was the first guy from the media to to call me when I started at track wrestling and encourage me. I was invited to his Hall of Fame induction, which was a huge highlight. And I got to literally sit with him at the media side at Coralville. Usually I'm doing interviews, but I actually got to sit with him. He's like, just give me your commentary on the finals as I write this up. And I was like, it's like sitting at the foot of the master. So, Gary, I'm not saying this, so you'll just make sure this episode goes on the air. You're the man. All right. We're going to sign off for Ed Duncan. I'm David Mirikitani. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Thanks, David.